It has been a crazy and busy week in the NBA community. Just this past Thursday, we had the NBA draft, and there was a lot of speculation as to who would go number one overall, and we saw Paolo Banchero go number one overall to the Orlando Magic. Over the weekend, we saw Woj tweeting about the head-to-head dysfunction between Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and the Brooklyn Nets organization, and now we get Skip Bayless, one of the biggest voices in the NBA and in the sports community, going back and forth on Twitter with a future first ballot Hall of Famer and Russell Westbrook. And I'm here to talk about today who is right and how did this all begin. So let's get into today's video. Now, before we actually get into today's video, if you guys could drop me a like. It takes 1 second and it helps me in the channel out tremendously. And if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe bell and those notifications on to stay tuned for more Jaguars and NBA content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure y'all go follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. The link tree will be in the description down below. Now let's get into today's video. Now I'm going to start this video off talking about what has transpired this past weekend between Skip Bayless and Russell Westbrook. And this all started on draft night when the Lakers in the second round took Max Christie out of Michigan State. I'm going to read the tweets. I'm going to put them up on the screen for you, and then we'll dissect them a little bit more. Skip Bayless tweets out, Lakers acquire a second round pick. Take Michigan State's Max Christie, who only shot 32% from three last season. Perfect. He'll fit right in with LeBron and Westbrook. Russell Westbrook did not take those comments very lightly and decided to respond. He responded back to Skip Bayless by saying, "Yo, watch your mouth. Don't say anything here you wouldn't say to my face." Skip Bayless, a couple of days later, heard about the tweet and decided to respond for himself, probably understanding that this would be great for TV, great for ratings, and I'm sure Undisputed and FS1 were absolutely loving it and probably gave him the green light to go ahead and try to get him to come onto a podcast. Skip Bayless responded to Russell Westbrook by saying, "Hey Russell Westbrook, happy to talk face to face about the nickname I believe I originated in 2012. Join me on TV/podcast. Let's talk about how you'll make $47 million next year after being the worst three-point shooter in the NBA. Most overpaid player ever? Question mark. Please join me." He then followed up by tweeting yet again, "Amazing and amusing how Russell Westbrook is trying to turn himself into a victim after he was such a nightmare for Laker Nation last year. All he has to do is shut up/shut down us critics is to simply make shots and quit committing sadly comical turnovers. But it's his critics' fault." Now, my take on that little bit of dialogue that we've got just this past weekend between Skip Bayless and Russell Westbrook. Let me say this first about Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook decides to come out and say, "Yo, watch your mouth. Don't say anything here that you wouldn't say to my face." Skip Bayless absolutely would say that directly to your face. We have seen Skip Bayless time and time again go with other athletes in the NFL and in the NBA community, go face to face on live television and do these types of interviews and call them out specifically. I've seen him call out, I think it was Terrell Owens or Chad Johnson, I can't remember which one. He told him he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. I remember the Richard Sherman one was a huge one, and he's had some other notable ones in the past. Skip Bayless at 70 years old, or however old he is, somewhere around that time frame, he would absolutely call out Russell Westbrook face to face and call him Westbrick and make his valid points.
This is Russell Westbrook on display last night. I don't think you can overcome Russell Westbrook. I think it's time once again for our daily ritual, our Russell Westbrook turnover blooper.
So Russell Westbrook off rip already knows that Skip Bayless would be doing that to him. Secondly, with Russell Westbrook, I don't see a scenario in which he would actually accept that invitation. I'm sure Russell Westbrook is very aware of the fact that Skip Bayless has now invited him onto Undisputed or the Skip Bayless podcast. I don't believe Russell Westbrook would actually come on there to defend himself. It has nothing to do with the ratings. I don't think Russell Westbrook has that kind of mentality and that kind of skin to take that kind of heat and that kind of pressure from a guy like Skip Bayless, who will absolutely dog him and call him out. Skip Bayless has made a career, and you can say whatever you want about him. You can talk about him being a hater. You can talk about him being the biggest critic of LeBron James. We've seen it with Steph Curry just this past season in the finals. Skip Bayless is very reluctant to give players their credit and their due diligence where it is earned. But Russell Westbrook in this scenario absolutely is in the wrong. Outside of Russell Westbrook trying to defend himself in his name, what has Russell Westbrook done this past season or throughout the tenure of his NBA career in order to not be nicknamed that? Russell Westbrook, just because you are a superstar and a guy who's getting paid like a superstar and a future first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the greatest players to have ever played this game at the point guard position and probably the most athletic point guard, whoever played the game at that position does not mean you are dismissed from scrutiny and any kind of accountability. Russell Westbrook, time and time again, deflects and does not take accountability. He is selfish in his mannerisms at times. I think he's a great person off the court. I think that he's got a lot of great modesty and a lot of good care for others. But when it comes to some of his mentalities and him taking responsibility and accountability for his play, that is something Russell Westbrook has been babied and coddled since his days in OKC, and we've seen it reluctantly time and time again throughout his tenure in the NBA. Now let's actually go into Russell Westbrook's history. When Russell Westbrook was with the Washington Wizards just 2 seasons ago, and he was only there for 1 season, he had some very questionable comments. He goes, "I'm happy. I was a champion once. I made it to the NBA. I grew up in the streets. I'm a champion. I don't have to be an NBA champion. I know that many people got NBA championships that's miserable, haven't done nothing for their community, haven't done nothing for the people in our world. And for me, man, my legacy is not based on what I do on this court. I'm not going to play basketball my whole life. My legacy is what I do off the floor. How many people I'm able to impact and inspire along my journey. That's how I keep my head down and keep pushing. There's no other player that kind of takes the heat that I take consistently, but I take it as a positive because obviously I'm doing something right if people are talking about me." Now, while Russell Westbrook, while I just on a black and white version agree with those comments, my job personally as, a college student, a kid making YouTube videos, and a guy who wants to become a sports journalist and broadcaster, my life is not defined by that. My life is defined by how I impact the other people around me, how I treat others, how I respect others, and how I take care of those people in my life. Absolutely. My job is not defined by what I do on this camera. I am bigger than that. And Russell Westbrook is bigger than what he does on the basketball court. Him inspiring the youth and giving back to the community. I absolutely love that for Russell Westbrook. But at the end of the day, your job, your contract, what you are getting paid for to make other franchises' bottom lines is to win basketball games. Something that you have been inept to do since your time in the NBA. You've been to 4 conference finals. You've been to 1 NBA finals. You've played with some great talent along the way, from Carmelo Anthony, who was a little version of himself, a shell of himself, Kevin Durant, James Harden twice, Reggie Jackson, Serge Ibaka, Bradley Beal, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. The list goes on. You are not inept to any form of criticism or any take of accountability. Your job is to win basketball games. You are getting paid over $200 million on a contract. You're about to opt into a $47.3 million contract, and yet you have to deflect. You don't take any accountability. When you have 8 turnovers, you say you play your game. Now let's get into some of your comments from the Lakers days this past season. I'm going to paraphrase, but I'm going to put the video up for you guys here to say, Russell Westbrook said that he had no expectations when going into the Lakers season this year. When the Lakers season was spiraling downhill and Anthony Davis was consistently injured, the Lakers were looking like they were going to miss the playoffs and the play-in tournament, which they ultimately did. Russell Westbrook, when asked by reporters, said he had 0 expectations coming into this season, which shows he is just delusional, just straight dysfunctional, does not take any sort of accountability. And let me play that clip for you guys here.
I had no expectations. See, that's why you don't know what I envision. I had no expectations. I come into every situation the same. Last 4 years of me, I've been on different teams 4 times. So my envision of kind of think everything gonna be peaches and cream, that's not realistic. That's not life. So for me, I come into every situation, start from ground zero and try to figure it out along the way. I have no expectations of how things will work, how many times I had a ball, what position I'm gonna play. That's literally, I just try to find ways to best help my teammates, and that's about it.
While in a black and white version, I understand what he's saying. He's absolutely wrong. And I'm not even a Lakers fan. Far from it. But would you play for a historic franchise like the Los Angeles Lakers, and you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis as your teammates, and you are a first ballot future Hall of Famer? You cannot say those types of things. You cannot say that stuff. And this is consistently why Skip Bayless and other reporters and myself have constantly been critics and have been consistently getting on to Russell Westbrook for a long time. This is not the first time I've gotten on to Russell Westbrook. This is not the only time Skip Bayless has gotten on to Russell Westbrook. This is a reoccurring theme, and Stephen A does it too.
And when you tell Laker fans you had no expectations, none, how could you possibly be a Laker? How could you be a Laker and you had no expectations coming into the season?
because we all acknowledge his talent, we all respect his greatness, but there's levels to this. He's not a top 5 point guard of all time. He is the most athletic point guard of all time. He's something nobody ever thought would be done. He recorded a triple-double 4 out of 5 seasons. We respect that. But Russell Westbrook is not a winner. He's not a winning type of point guard. He's not going to bring that to the game. And I respect him for his hustle. I respect everything he's done for the game. But Russell Westbrook has to do better. And the last thing I'm going to say as well, too, is the fact that just because he's been on the Lakers this year and he's gotten a lot more limelight because he's playing for the Lakers with LeBron and AD, Russell Westbrook's always been this player. Since 2016, since Kevin Durant departed from the Oklahoma City Thunder, Russell Westbrook's been out of the first round one time in the bubble. And while I've only been a YouTuber now for almost 3 years, which tomorrow makes 3 years, so happy little anniversary to me, I have been one of the biggest critics of Russell Westbrook. Since his days in Houston and Washington, I literally made a video years ago saying he's the most overrated superstar in NBA history. This is not something new coming from me. I have been one of his biggest critics since his Oklahoma City days. I respect his greatness. I acknowledge it. But he is the most overrated superstar in NBA history. This is not just recency bias with his tenure in LA. Okay, and really, this is the last thing I'm going to end it on. I understand the argument that, Skip Bayless is just a hater. Skip Bayless is tarnishing this man's last name. Y'all can say whatever you want. First of all, like I said, I don't think Russell Westbrook or any NBA player or any superstar athlete is dismissed from criticism. You are going to get criticized regardless, okay? First of all, Russell Westbrook could just ignore it. He doesn't have to respond to it. The Lakers fans were telling him not to shoot. They were booing him. Okay, so let's not act like Skip Bayless is the only one criticizing Russell Westbrook or Russell Westbrick. But secondly, what does Russell Westbrook do to change that narrative? Play better. It's that simple. Don't turn the ball over as many times as you've turned the ball over. Stop shooting contested mid-range jumpers where you're hitting the side of the backboard. Stop bricking every open three. Stop playing carelessly and start just playing better. It's that simple. Russell Westbrook controls his own narrative. He's been hard-headed his entire career, no matter who was coaching him, whether it was D'Antoni, whether it was Scott Brooks, or now Frank Vogel, or I guess now Darvin Ham. Whoever Russell Westbrook's coaches have been, they've never been able to get through to him because Russell Westbrook knows how to play one way, and that's hard. And I respect him for that, but that's why as a hard-headed player who's a point guard, you're not going to win with him. He's never going to win a ring. He controls his own narrative. And I'm sure LeBron James, just 30 games into last season, was tired of him. But that's besides the point. Russell Westbrook, you control your own narrative. Skip Bayless, I'm not saying he's right, but I mean, he's got all the evidence to back it up. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you guys think is in the right and wrong between Skip Bayless and Russell Westbrook? Obviously, this is an ongoing situation. I'm really curious to see if Russell Westbrook will respond to this and actually join Skip Bayless face-to-face on the podcast or on Undisputed. I would love to see something like that. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll catch you guys next time. Brett James, a.k.a. BJ. I'm out, y'all. Peace.